Hi, and welcome again to another one of our tech videos from Bullet Central. My name is Chris Harris, and today we're going to talk to you a little bit about cleaning the Bix'n Andy trigger. Bix'n Andy trigger, as probably a lot of you know, is becoming really famous, very successful in the United States and around the world. And we get a lot of calls coming in here saying, hey, what do I do? How do I clean my trigger? And it's a very valid question. We asked the manufacturer a couple of years back, what do we tell people? And he said, don't just leave it. There's no need to clean it because it's an encapsulated environment and you shouldn't get any dirt in there. But we're in America here. We shoot some really dusty, dry ranges, and there's a lot of things that can get in there, I would like to think. And also misuse of cleaning solvents. If you're cleaning a rifle and you don't have a proper way to prevent the fluids from dripping down into your trigger, you're going to get those gooey things down here, and I can assure you that is at some point in time is going to jam up your trigger, and you don't want that. So I do feel that we need to, at least on an annual basis, have a look at this trigger, get it open, get inside, clean it out properly so it's ready for the next season. Some of you may want to clean it on a more frequent basis. You're fine. We've heard rumors out there that we should be cleaning it after every single shoot and pouring lighter fluid down it. I think it's worthwhile mentioning here that is bogus. We absolutely don't do that. First of all, it's not necessary to clean them after every shoot, and second, we definitely don't want you cleaning the trigger without opening it. Okay, so that's something we're going to show you how to go about doing that today. So before we get started, there are a couple of things I think you're going to need. One, I think is really nice to have is a nice lint-free cloth to work on, just so you don't get any little specks of fiber into the action of the trigger. We've got a little dish here to catch some of the solvents, because your wife or maybe your husband is not going to be really happy with you if you're cleaning your trigger on the kitchen table. Some solvents of choice. We've got a can of denatured alcohol, which we think is going to be fine, and some lighter fluid. We brought lighter fluid in because this is a product that a lot of people use today to clean their jewel triggers. So we well au fait with it, and I'm sure you've all got some of it, and I'm pretty sure that's going to work fine. You could also use something like brake clean. That's going to flash off very nice and quickly and leave a very dry surface, which is on the parts in the trigger, which is what you want. And then important is some form of compressed air. You could actually use a compressor if you've got one, but otherwise get down to your hardware store and get yourself just a tin of this that they use for cleaning cameras, or small. I'll just go over the parts quickly on this trigger so we are fair with things. You've probably seen this in maybe some other videos. Here's your trigger. This would be your top sear bar. Underneath the trigger, your sear adjustment screw. That would be your bottom sear adjustment screw, and that is your trigger weight set screw to adjust your trigger weight. On the back side of the trigger, you're going to see two tiny little set screws, which we're going to call jack screws for this presentation, and you'll see why we need them now. And then on the front cover, we have 4 Phillips screws. They are, number 1 Phillips screw will actually open this up. Those are the 4 screws that are holding down the cover plate. So I'm going to start just by removing the cover plate screws. Just make sure you've got really good engagement with your screwdriver when you're opening this. Should be fairly easy to open, or to release the screws, I should say. Now once you've done that, this front cover is not just going to pop off. In fact, it's going to be pretty difficult to remove. So what we are going to have to do is wind these little jack screws in to lift the plate. And that's the reason. The reason for that is because the machining between the housing for the trigger and the cover plate is so tight that this, is not just going to pop apart. One other little tool that, or I should mention both these tools here, that you will need is a #1 Phillips screwdriver and the little Allen key. It's 1.5mm that came with the trigger when you purchased it. So I'm going to take the 1.5mm Allen key, and here I'm going to screw these screws in just a little bit each side. Here we go. And you can see the cover plate is starting to ease off here. So I would just keep alternating kitty corner with these little jack screws. And one thing you don't need to worry about, a lot of people, when they open up a trigger, and I was too the first time I opened a trigger, was, what's going to happen? We're going to have springs flying in all directions and parts missing and, the dog eating half your trigger. That's not going to happen unless you're really irresponsible. But you'll see here, the one thing that can come out are these two little balls. Okay, so I'll just hold them up for you again there to show you where the pocket that they go into. There are the two little balls for the set attachment. You can actually operate this trigger, funny enough, without the cover on. You can see there's the mechanism working, but we need to take those balls and we can put them aside for us to put back in. So now we have our trigger open. You may find some dirt in there, you may not. It's likely that it's going to be fairly clean. So next step would be to flush this trigger out, and that's why I've got this little foil pan, so the solvent doesn't go everywhere. And I just put the trigger down in the pan. Open this up, and I'm just going to douse this trigger thoroughly in solvent. If you see any visible signs of dirt, just give it a close inspection, maybe even a little loop or something. Then work on those areas and make sure that they get flushed away. Otherwise, just again, just flush it thoroughly. And right now this trigger is pretty much soaked, and we'd like to think that the debris and maybe some cleaning solvent is now gone. Now, what is really important is that we dry this trigger out. We've had people come to us and say, oh, the trigger's failed, it's not working, and this has been after they poured lighter fluid just into the trigger and just left it and felt everything would work. That is not going to work for you. Okay, probably going to mention that a couple more times during this video. So what I want you to do now is to grab your source of air, make sure that everything is in here nicely. Just put your thumb on top to hold it down, and just spray the trigger inside of the trigger until you've got rid of all visible signs of the fluid. There, and I think what I've managed to do here is dry that out really well. So now I need to reassemble it. It's as simple as that. First thing you want to do is to make sure you back out these two little jack screws flush with the backside of the trigger housing. I'm going to do that, otherwise you're simply not going to be able to get your cover plate to sit flush with the trigger. So there we got that. Put that cover back in. Phillips screws in place. Make sure you get them torqued down pretty good. So there you go. You now have your Bix'n anti-trigger clean. If you have any issues with that at all, please feel free to call us. We love chatting to you, so more than happy to guide you through any concerns or whatever, but I'm sure that this video should be able to help you get all your triggers in tip-top condition for your next shoot or next season. Thank you again for watching. Look forward to seeing you next week.